Welcome to another episode of Go FUD Yourself. Today you are stuck with me. We have no JD, but you do have the grace of Andy. Andy, how are you?
Hello. It's good to be back. Fudding yourself, fudding myself.
I think you're FUDing yourself. Yeah.
Yeah, I can fud myself. I enjoy that, and it's good to hang out with you.
It's nice to see you. Today's a little bit of a weird episode because we were off yesterday. So we have a really big weekend news roundup. Yesterday was Canadian Thanksgiving.
Oh, that's right.
Yeah. It was
Did you give thanks?
no.
Oh, well, that's sad. I love Thanksgiving.
Yeah, we
Thanksgiving
did.
is one of my absolute favorite holidays. And like I'm excited to cook a turkey, and like I found myself at a get together this weekend just talking with other dads about like grilling techniques and turkeys. It was so cliche. It was really funny.
You're like barbecuing and mowing the lawn, and someone had a leaf blower.
Yeah, there was football involved too. Like it was the whole thing.
But the weather this is strange, but typically by now it's quite cold. And so last week it was only 5 degrees Celsius. I had to harvest the whole garden. It's a good time for Thanksgiving. But then this weekend it was almost 30 degrees out, which is summer balmy, especially for where I live. It wasn't even that warm all summer. So nobody really had their internal turkey dinners. Everybody was outside and doing things. So it was just a different vibe, but it was really nice. But it means that we have so much news today. Which is a little bit wacky doodles. So today we're going to talk about Binance because I can't help myself. They're in the news every day. We're going to talk about Ripple. We're going to talk about crypto Twitter and Ripple on crypto Twitter. And then we are going to finish with some institutional finance components.
Whoa.
Yeah? Are you stoked?
Yeah, I'm all buttoned up.
But before we get into that, what are you doing?
Hey, everybody. My name's Andy. If you don't know me, I'm Andy Boyan. I'm a longtime friend of JD and short time, but great time friend of Kiara. And I make infinity keys. So I've been in the space for 5-ish years or something. I used to work for Chainlink. I used to work for Labs. I used to work for Status and some other people. Former professor before then. I was an academic before then. We were just talking about that a little bit. And now we make Infinity Keys. Infinity Keys is a user-generated content gaming platform. So the idea is you can come and build your own mini games. And they're like seek mini games where you try and figure out a passcode, like a little riddle, or they're solve mini games where you gotta like play a little game in the screen and solve something and unlock and move forward. Or, and here's where it really matters, is they're collect mini games. You've got to go collect NFTs. What NFTs? Well, the creators decide. And so you want to revive your dead NFT collection, you make a collecting game, and now people got to go collect your old, whatever frog NFTs that you have. And not only you, but now other people can collect those too. So that's what we're building. We launched last year and our alpha and made a bunch of stuff and made a little splash. And we have closed everything to build beta better. So next year we'll be coming out with our beta version with creator tools so people can come and build their own little mini games and quests. And there's like, a token and everything. And we don't pay players, we'll pay creators. So you build games for the economic flywheel to get going and stuff like that. We've been going good. So we've been quiet. If you've been looking online, we've been quiet because we are in build mode. But we did enter a hackathon a month or so ago just for fun because we had an extra couple of weeks. And we won second prize. That was a couple of weeks ago. Totally not a Web3 thing. It was a Web2 hackathon. We built something fun. So yeah.
What did you build?
It's called The Scene. It's like a punk rock social app. So like you go to a show and you take a picture and post it, and it's a post on like a map. And so you can see like, hey, what's happening? And then you can also go and rate the shows and contribute your own photos and stuff like that. And it's all like supposed to be underground and punk rock and fun, stuff like that. So
that's kind of cool. How big is the team now at Infinity Keys?
We got 4 devs and me and a couple other, designer and a couple other part-time friends pitching in all over the place. So, we're 6-ish, jamming in that half dozen direction.
Okay, so you said that you're sort of in build stage. Are there still games to play? What's your favorite game up?
There's one game, and play it next week because we're revising it a little bit, and it will have a new format, and there will be only one game as like our demo game. It's called The Society, and it's easy, but it kind of gives you an idea of like, oh, I'm going to interact with these mini games and solve this little puzzle and enter something and claim an NFT. So cool. Only one game up right now.
Cool. Thank you for sharing. Okay, I will plug it next week. Just send me a message and I will.
Yeah, well.
I played a lot of the games that are up, and I have quite a little NFT collection.
Good. You want to collect those? Those are good to collect. Good to collect.
Okay, well, let's take a little musical interlude and then we'll jump into the news.
It's so punk rock. I love it.
We have, I think, 4 different versions now, and JD always picks the hip hop one, which is great. I mean, hip hop is fantastic. It's also a little bit longer. I think it gives him more time to be nefarious off camera. But that one's my favorite right now, and I think it's the most representative of me. And the other ones, I'm always like really dolled up and sexy and stuff. And in that one, I am in fact a stick figure. Yeah.
I like it. So this hackathon, we're supposed to give presentations, and it's all Web 2. And so they present like a pitch, like they're a bunch of nerds. They're great and they're awesome builders, wonderful people, but they're nerds that are building software. And so we got up there, and I just started yelling punk rock lyrics. I sang like to lead this pitch competition because it shocked everybody out of their seats, and they're all like, "What's this team doing?" So and then we present this punk thing. So I'm all about it.
That sounds fun.
Yeah, it was fun.
Okay, the news. First of all, we're going to talk about Binance. Do you have any personal biases about Binance at this time? Just to clarify for our FUD viewers before.
No, I don't. I'm actually really curious about CZ and what's been going on, because the context I think everybody should keep in mind is SBF trial is also going on right now. And so like a lot of people are paying attention to SBF trial as not just a trial of SBF, but also like understanding our industry and like, is it just full of liars and fraudsters and crooks? Mm-hmm. At the same time, the lead up to this, there's been a ton of accusation and like rumor mill about CZ. And so now the stuff that's coming out about Binance is clearly like a strong play to be like, but we're okay. Like we're not that, we're trying our best. So I think that context is really, really important. And honestly, I think most of the news right now should be viewed in light of the SBF trial is going on, and people have to think about that.
I'm so glad that you see that, because obviously Binance could catch crap in the news as they did not complete the bailout, as they may or may not have been investors in FTX and so on and so forth. And so I know that some people are very, very bull on Binance right now, saying, "Oh, well, they're the ones." You can see from all of the good news that they're kind of our positive player, but there are a lot of people who feel otherwise because they are in regulatory hot water in all kinds of major jurisdictions. People are not sure what their business play is, if you will, and they are always trying to find loopholes. So one of the things that's been interesting is just a couple of weeks ago, I've been talking about this on and off, but just a couple of weeks ago, they got a new CMO. So she was already at Binance. She was a VP. They've moved her up to CMO, and she's had quite an interesting PR strategy where they are actively working with police, where they are actively about once a week saying, "We believe that this particular city is going to be the next crypto hub," but every week they pick a different particular city. And so they really are trying to appeal to certain areas. Mm-hmm. And I find that they're in the news every day right now. Just over the weekend, I found 5 different articles that they were in the news about that were mostly positive. So one was about UK. The UK has a new kind of like France has a new thing where you need to get a certificate if you're going to be a financial influencer and what have you. And so Binance hasn't gotten that certificate. So their crypto ads have been banned, but Binance had really good press about it where they said that they're going to get the certificate and that they support this. And so there's like this bad article about Binance being banned from crypto ads, but then there's a good article about Binance saying that they're going to comply.
Yeah. Oh yeah. We're compliant.
Balance, right?
Yeah. Strong messaging is really important right now with very public crypto companies. When I go and I talk to, I'm at this Web 2 conference, and I say I'm in crypto, I get side eyes. Like people do not trust crypto folks with good reason, in my opinion. Like over the past couple of years, what we've seen is an industry flush out of terrible actors and fraudsters, and we need to address that and be aware of that. How do we address that? We do good messaging and we comply with the law, and like we don't make only total degen products. We have try and find product market fit that's not pure Ponzi plays and things like that. So I see this as a positive sign that some people in leadership in crypto are getting that message. We got to step up the game. and do this, because there's many, like if you look at Sam SBF, he did not follow that playbook. He represented himself really poorly over the past year
Mhm.
leading up to this trial, and now like some of the rumor mill is like he might be writing his own legal documents and things like this. Like he's not
Oh
representing
my
himself
goodness.
well. Yeah, that's all, rumor and
Yeah, of
hearsay,
course.
but like still, like the strategy isn't very clear. If you've got a clear strategy, Coinbase has had a really clear strategy,
Absolutely.
and they've been very good about that. And when they get pressed about that, that's how they follow. And Binance too. And so that's what I've been wondering about Binance. Oh, do they have a strategy? Or are they just like trying to keep their nose down? The four thing, and like that's pretty cryptic. That's pretty weird. And so, what are they going to do? Either be quiet and be weird,
Yeah,
or address things head on. And this all feels like head on stuff. Like, well, let
absolutely.
the news cycle at least do some good.
Yeah. I think that they were cryptic for a while. Maybe they didn't have a strategy. There was a lot of uncertainty. And now with their new CMO, she has put together something very clear, which is comply, comply, comply,
Yeah.
and kind of a little bit of a kiss ass strategy as well, right? One of the things that they do seem to be doing is working with police really actively, any police who want to work with them. So exactly 1 week ago, we had in the news that Binance assisted the Royal Thai Police in cracking down on criminal networks. And then in the news, I don't want to get too political here, but there was big news over the weekend about what is going on in Israel and what have you. And so Binance is working with the Israeli police to try to prevent terrorism and militant groups.
Yeah, compliance, right? As much as they can comply and build that goodwill, that's their strategy. What's interesting about that, like freezing accounts, that's like one of the major crypto value proposition is owning your own assets and
Right.
holding your own assets and not being able to have those frozen. If you give that custody over to a Binance, to whoever it happens to be, then you sacrifice that. So that is a really
Yes,
interesting play on this, and it's just kind of really interesting example and a case study. But one of the
absolutely.
consequences that we face as an industry of giving people more freedom doesn't always mean giving the people that you like freedom, or vice
Right.
versa.
There's also, yeah, Israel, Palestine. What side are you kind of on? What does that look like? What
Mhm.
is Binance signaling with this? Are they going to It's pretty ballsy, actually.
Yeah.
A lot of people try to stay very neutral. And so to have Binance taking a stand in this way shows you maybe what side they are on politically, or who they're going to comply with in other countries, or under other sorts of reforms. And that could be dangerous for them too. I wonder if they'll lose users or gain users, right?
They're so big, they're gonna
Yeah.
lose users and gain users. Like when you're humongous,
Right.
you face so many other challenges. Um, that it's that scale, right? That part of scaling is just part of that too. Is, well,
Mhm.
now you're dealing with geopolitical stuff. Infinity
Yes.
keys, I don't have to do with that, right? Like I got a thousand users, and if they're coming in too hot from some country and it looks like maybe a bot attempt, we just close it down, right? It's like it's fine.
Yeah,
We'll
yeah.
lose 10 people, but it's just a matter of scale that's really different,
That's right.
that you face with this stuff.
I do also want to note that this isn't exactly new news. So the Israeli authorities have seized about 190 Binance accounts since 2021 related to suspected terrorist organizations. So although we think that this is hot news, it's something that's actually been going on in the background anyways. It just is really coming to the forefront with our global current events news. Yeah.
Police love crypto for tracking where money goes.
Well, it is good for that.
It's on a public
JD and I
ledger.
talk pretty regularly about crypto gets a bad rap for being participating in human trafficking or drug trafficking or those types of things. And JD and I talk fairly often when these news articles come up about how nefarious activity is going to exist anyways. And at least with blockchain, you can track it on the transparent ledger. But then when we end up with something that is less transparent, whether that's just off-chain transactions that then sync later or what have you, that can become problematic. But
Mhm.
maybe that's a you and JD day.
Hit it up later.
Yeah.
What else we got?
All right. So crypto Twitter. I think that your and my crypto Twitter are pretty different.
I
Also,
think
are we
so.
allowed to still call it Twitter?
Sure.
I don't know. But I have been seeing that it was really quiet over the last little while. I think because people were at conferences. And then with that in mind, people are trying to mine attention, because now you can get paid to mine attention on crypto Twitter in America. And so most of what I see is a lot of not actual news or just drama. And I think that some of the articles that we had come up this weekend from crypto Twitter are related to just news and drama and kind of stirring the pot. But I don't know, maybe you're seeing something different.
Maybe I've curated my feed in the bear market so much, but this week and the weekend and into last week, I saw a shift, a bull vibe shift. People are bull
Ooh.
posting, and it's not because of price action; it's because of uh, other activity in the market. And I think part of it might be a desperation play of like, we're still down, but like we've been down for a long time, so maybe we won't be. But one of the articles I saw, I'm not sure if we're talking about it, is like the guy from Nansen is
Oh, yeah.
predicting a rally, and he's not the only one like that. So I'm seeing quite a bit of this as people are starting to position for a rally, and
Right.
maybe that doesn't mean full on long term institutions are back, but there is a lot of this sort of institutional activity that the spotty ETFs, like, okay,
Right.
there's not a lot of activity on them, but they're there now.
Right.
Bitcoin ETFs are coming up. Like, people are starting to get this vibe. That's what I'm seeing on crypto Twitter. So I'm not seeing as much of the drama that you're seeing, but
Interesting.
I will acknowledge it is there.
Well, I'm sure it's
Feels like it
there.
always comes from the same places to me. But anyways,
Well, exactly that. I also wonder, this is going to be the most Canadian thing I can say, but in the depths of our winter, when it is heinously cold out, they always tell us that next week it's going to be better, next week it's going to be warmer. And I've always thought that this was a ploy to just keep our people alive, because it is not going to be warmer next week. You have to wait. It's like, you just have to wait. And sometimes I feel that way about crypto Twitter with the bull market is, oh, well, we're seeing some indicators and I think there's going to be a rally, and just you wait, just keep cost dollar averaging and it's going to come. And I wonder if that's just to kind of like hold people here with us.
maybe in the 1819, in 19, in the beginning of 20. Oh man, it was, this is over. Like,
Yeah.
I'm not sure this worked. It was, good try. Maybe Bitcoin will have a future, but like everything else, you guys kind of
Mhm.
think about doing something else. But now there's consensus. When I say to people who are not in the industry, it's like it goes in cycles and it'll come back. It's just a matter of broader
Yeah.
economy things and the right pieces in place. People agree with me, and maybe they're being polite because they know I'm a lunatic in this crypto thing. But I don't think so. I think there is a much more of a general consensus, and we see things like the spot ETFs,
Right.
like the House of Representatives in the U.S. trying to push forward crypto and stablecoin legislation, and actors in those political bodies with real like action items and agendas and things like that. There are a lot more of these signs than there were last time of like broader mainstream adoption, which
Right.
to everybody, to my circles, just mean like, all right, we'll keep building, just do your best, tighten your belt, and
Mhm.
we'll push forward.
Mhm.
um so I still think so, like, right, I look at the fundamentals of ETH and like what it does, not just as a financial
Yeah, for sure.
product, but like the value proposition of a worldwide computer and that sort of thing is like, it's cool. The stuff we're doing is cool. There are use cases for it. It'll come back, and,
Absolutely.
and people will pop on again. So anyway, that's the sort of stuff I'm seeing on crypto Twitter. But the other thing I will say about bear market in particular is, and this actually goes back to Binance, is the messaging gets really hard. Because like Infinities, we're in build mode right now, and we don't have a huge microscope on us. People are looking, but people do pop in and are like, "Hey, I haven't heard from you in a little while." It's like, yeah, we're building software, and I'm trying not to spend my time on Twitter telling you about every repo that we push for a UX update or whatever it is, and that's the same. And so I feel like a lot of the stuff on crypto Twitter that we saw, the stories that are coming up, they're about that. It's like founders or projects that need to talk more regularly with their communities and have not done so, or have not done so effectively. I think that's where a lot of the drama comes from.
A great example of that is Cardano. I know that neither of us are exactly Cardano experts, but one of the news articles that came up or that has been going on crypto Twitter is that Cardano was facing some scrutiny by Fabian. I don't know if you're a big Fabian fan, but Fabian is huge in Web3. He has almost 50,000 followers. So when he says something, people really start to look into it, right?
Hmm.
Scrutiny. But one of the criticisms that Cardano is facing is that a lot of projects are dead in the water, and there hasn't been any announcement about those projects closing or being relevant or becoming irrelevant or continuing to build. And it's kind of interesting. So one of those that I thought was interesting is the Ethiopia use case. So Cardano has been working with public and private schools in Ethiopia to create digital ID for students and teachers for part of their nationwide blockchain based program. And over time, it is supposed to create over 5 million digital IDs. This is really cool because it's actually a utility case, it's actually a use case, but we're probably not going to get a lot of news on it. And so the Cardano people are saying, hey, yeah, we are still doing this. Sorry that you haven't heard from us, but it just probably isn't that relevant to your day-to-day life. That doesn't mean we're not building.
Yeah. What do you do in the bear market? There's no users right now. Like
Right.
nobody's using stuff except for friend tech.
Mhm.
So you get these one-off unicorns
Yeah.
that are doing transaction volume and good for them. But everything else is just bleeding users as people get apathetic. And so if you're launching a new product, do you decide do you launch that product even though it's going to get a couple of hundred users? The ETH
Right.
spot ETF, not to bring it up again and
Oh,
live on
but
it, but like it did not do very much volume. Do you abandon it and be like, well, it was open for a week and we tried and then it's gone? It's like, no, right now we're building for the future, for future use cases. And as a builder, as a founder myself, like where do we build? That is the constant question. Like where
Mhm.
do you put your focus and attention and energy and whatever runway you got? I think Cardano's probably got a little more than me, but
I don't know. They weren't at a Web2 conference winning hackathons, so who knows?
cha-ching, $2,000. Uh, but that's a question. And so on the other hand, on the flip side, so you never know like exactly where you're supposed to be building. You got to put your best efforts forward, and building is not only what do you ship, but it's
Mhm.
also communicating about the build and doing that sort of stuff. Aligning all those pieces together for every single product release is really hard. There's team turnover and who knows, there's all the layoffs that are happening in crypto as well. I'm not sure that happened to
Yeah,
that
yeah.
Cardano Foundation, but I'm defending Charles, which I'm not used to doing.
So you're
But in
saying
this
instead
case,
it comes back to messaging again? Binance, Cardano, FTX messaging.
I'm a communication guy. It all comes back
Yeah,
to
yeah, yeah.
messaging, right?
You know who's doing a fairly good job with that messaging actually is Ripple. You want to talk about the AMM? Pretty cool.
AMM's really interesting. I did not see this coming, but thinking of it in the context of the SEC decision
Mhm.
in favor of Ripple a couple of weeks ago, there's this idea of how decentralized do you need to be in order to be decentralized and like not face how we test issues. And so to push for an AMM is a real push towards decentralization for some of these
Yes.
financial products. And so I see this as strategic, but then also AMMs are really great. They're a great product that have product market fit in crypto, and can be really effective. Now,
Right.
that's the end of my knowledge of Ripple. Like I don't know how an AMM works on Ripple. I thought it was a money transmitter, banking system, and that's kind of like the end of my knowledge is end of 2018 stuff I checked out. So I don't know that much about the product itself or the users and things like that.
This is actually something that is really interesting. Not that I'm a Ripple expert myself, but typically when we see Ripple in the news, it's because they're working with governments and CBDCs and cross-border transactions and more institutional style finance. So we would assume that their business strategy is to be the first mover in that and maybe work with MasterCard and that kind of thing, as we've seen them come out with. So watching them then start working on something that's decentralized again, sorry, watching them start on something that's decentralized again tells me that they do have a two-pronged strategy. They're kind of ready to cut their losses, but also that maybe the work that they're doing with all of the centralized and institutional side is going to support some of the decentralized side. So maybe they aren't against the DeFi ethos as we like to kind of talk about. But
Yeah.
yeah.
I don't know. It's a really interesting question. Pulling in developers to their ecosystem, that's the secret for all these chains, right?
Right.
You got to get developers. And so give developers more to work with. If people are excited about AMMs and know how they work, bring them on in. When we're looking for funding, we know how to build stuff with NFTs. And so when I go
Right.
look at the grants page, Neo came up. There's grants
Yep.
for Neo, which is like this old, dinosaur chain with smart contracts, but they're looking for stuff that we know how to build. And so when I look at that, I'm actually thinking like, well, could I go and build there? That's an interesting question. For XRP, I've never even considered it because like I'm not going to work with banks. Like I don't have those relationships.
Right,
An
right.
AMM, DeFi, like, well, I know Solidity devs. I know people who can have spun those up, and tried this. So suddenly, it's this call for
Mhm.
developers, which is growth, but it's also decentralization. It moves that needle out. So
Maybe you
uh,
could work with banks. Maybe banks need infinity keys.
I maybe.
Maybe there's a market you haven't considered, Andy.
Not yet. We're going to go with people who already have NFTs first. So
Fine.
we'll see.
But the other thing that I like about this from the concept of DeFi ethos is that, of course, they aren't going to move forward with the AMM unless there's community consensus. And I always love seeing community consensus. So
yeah, what's
okay.
that? Do we know what that is? Do they have like governance votes, on-chain governance?
They do, but only for their DeFi side. So
No.
anything that they're doing with CBDC, BIS, etc., they just do. And then anything that is on this DeFi side, has to be passed, but I hadn't seen anything even go up in a couple of months, which is why I was surprised to see this article come up. Yeah. Usually I see Ripple talking about working with banks right now in Swift, right?
There is another trend that I think crypto natives are pushing, which is that traditional institutions might want access to DeFi type stuff. Now, they don't want it right now. They don't want to buy governance tokens. They want to, get the impermanent loss and, ape in on being and all that. But maybe they'll want tokenized real world assets, or maybe they'll want to interact with a public chain for verifying identity or something like that. Like there are these use cases. And so like Chainlink a couple weeks ago had their SmartCon big releases around CCIP. They're presenting at Sibos and like all this, the banking conferences specifically for that. I'm of course Chainlink total marine, but but the idea there is like, well, do we have systems that can talk to banking backends that don't need all this new upgrades?
Right.
If so, then we can start connecting banks together using blockchain infrastructure, which is really useful because if you want to share information and like make sure all parties are being fair, like blockchain's actually a pretty good way to do that.
For sure.
So anyways, that and then if those institutions then want to access decentralized stuff, now they have the option to. So this is a part of this too. If they're connecting banks and CBDCs and all this, well, we also have this DeFi stuff as well. If that's of interest to you, or if it will be of interest to you in 3 years, 5 years, 10 years, yes, those are still ecosystems that are worth growing.
Well, and we are seeing tokenization in terms of institutional finance. Great segue. Thank you, Andy. So just this weekend, Backed Finance has launched on Base Network a tokenized government bond. So this is, I think this is pretty wild. Not what I thought government bonds were going to look like in the short term. But
well, tokenization is not unique to crypto.
Correct.
So it's a software principle of how do you represent something in software, in code, and having a token is just a great way to do that, right? It's an object in a database or wherever it is that can move around, and then where ownership is. What's cool is if you stick that on a blockchain and now it's permissionless to transfer or see or access or whatever, that's really interesting, and it can be really fast around cross-border stuff too. That's what I'm wondering. Like when I want to send when I want to send money overseas, I just use crypto. It's so fast. I just send USDC,
so much
right?
Easier.
It's crazy easier than any legacy system.
Yes.
Can you do that with bonds? Like, are you allowed to do that? Like, I don't know.
Maybe once they're tokenized, but actually one of the things that's interesting about these bonds is that specifically they have introduced a short-term US Treasury bond ETF that you cannot buy in America because American regulation does not allow for that. So I'm thinking that there must be cross-border utility, but what is it?
Yeah, I mean, it's about access. People want access to financial instruments.
Yes.
And
no, it is. Sorry, go ahead.
No. I'm just thinking through this, and getting T-bills is people are starting to think about that and collect those, and stablecoin backed T-bills and tokenize that you can now trade. If that's what's happening on the institutional side, and people are starting to think about, well, how could I do this way faster? And then maybe they're thinking about it like I'm thinking about a cross-border USDC. Like I'm just going to send a contractor $500. Like takes a minute. It's so fast. You just pop open your wallet and you do it. If that becomes if that sort of speed and the barrier to entry it just drops for more advanced financial products, that's really interesting. That's a totally different velocity of money when it comes to bonds and equities and all these sorts of things.
Well, it sounds
mortgages,
like, it sounds like that's what the Bank for International Settlements is starting to do. So they just launched Project Mariana, which is exactly what you were talking about. It is so much easier to go cross-border without having to use SWIFT, etc. And so to compete with that, we can now have institutional wholesale cross-border payments via crypto under the Bank of International Settlements law. Wow.
I don't know about the BIS.
No?
I am like from this crypto Twitter world where like all I've ever seen is mistrust of them, and so I don't
Yeah.
have a sophisticated opinion. But it is like it's a private chain. It's like a,
Yes.
is it federated or is it just like a private chain?
I believe it's just a private chain because they seem to work with a variety of nations, everyone from Singapore to the Swiss.
So private chains are weird. Like, why do I need a private chain? Why can't I just use a database if it's a private chain? So like I have some pretty like fundamental issues with
Oh, for
private
sure.
chains and corporate chains and things like that. That it's really useful when all of those nations that they're working with need to see all the transactions and understand that everybody's being fair together. And
Right.
if that's the case, then that's great. But otherwise, like if you're dealing with two parties, like I don't know, it just
I
seems
think this is interesting too because I see it as a play that is specifically trying to compete with Swift because Swift is working with Chainlink. But Chainlink and Swift are both more reputable and easier to trust and more legitimate. So I don't know exactly what they're going to do here, but it's just kind of interesting. Maybe something to keep tabs on.
Yeah, maybe you're right. Maybe that's it. And or the other thing with BIS is that for a very long time they have just tracked crypto and the
True.
industry and like how do things work. And so are we going to have a CBDC or how do we support CBDCs or how do we push them? Right? Maybe it's in their interest to have a whole bunch of CBDCs,
Mhm.
whereas other systems may feature more permissionless stablecoins or whatever it is.
Yeah.
So maybe that is it. It's just exploration of making sure that they're plugged in to know like here's how these things work. Because there's nothing more damaging to your reputation to come out and talk about crypto and have no idea what you're talking about and just sound like a total idiot. Whereas on the
Don't
other
talk
hand,
about me like that.
no, you're good.
I'm
You know what's
teasing. I'm
up.
teasing.
But if you come out and you've built systems, and so even if you don't know exactly how the layer 2 roll-ups work and everything, like, well, here's how we built our system, here's the consensus that we used, understanding some of these basic things, it frames limitations, it lets you understand the questions that your clients, customers, other countries will have. So it could be a valuable exercise for them regardless.
Well, exciting. A half hour always goes so fast with you, Andy. We'll have to bring you on soon again. Maybe you can do an episode with JD and argue with him about something. If people want to find you, where can they do that?
Andy Boyan on Twitter. I post there sometimes, and
Is there a lot? I think.
I've been a little lazy on it lately. We've been building, we've been hustling. I'm Andy Boyan everywhere. I'm Andy Boyan on Discord. I'm Andy Boyan on Telegram.
You Andy Boyan in real life?
I'm Andy Boyan in real life. I'm on LinkedIn. I'm like totally doxxed. I'm just a regular guy. Twitter's a good place to ping me. I tweet about games and on-chain games and cool stuff and sometimes dad things. So hit me up.
Oh, amazing. Well, thank you so much for joining us, Andy, and for bringing some new insight to our typical topics like Binance. I'm going to keep Binance communications and strategic messaging in mind going forward as we report on them every single ding dong day. But with that, happy Tuesday. Go FUD yourself.
Go FUD yourself.